Hello, and welcome to Nex-Tech's The PitMaster. I'm Kelly Wertz of Legs Up BBQ in Great Bend, Kansas. We're here today. We're going to go through spare ribs, pork spare ribs, pork St. Louis cut ribs, and also pork baby back ribs. We'll get some out of the package, show you how to prep them, trim them, show you how we're going to go ahead and season them, and then put them on the cooker, let them cook for a while. We're going to do a couple of different things to some of them, just to show you some of the different things you can do to ribs. We'll foil some, we'll leave some go straight without foiling, show you how to tell when they're done, and then go ahead and finish them up, slice them so you can present them so they're nice and pretty for you when your company comes over for that barbecue rib supper. Well, let's go ahead and get some ribs out of the freezer and get started. Out of the refrigerator, actually. Okay, so what we've got today is we've got 2 packs of full pork spare ribs and 1 pack of pork baby back ribs, or loin back ribs, you know, whatever name you want to go by. There's loin back ribs, baby back ribs, loin ribs, they're all the same thing. We're going to take one of our spare ribs and cook it whole, just like that. The other one we're going to trim down to a St. Louis cut rib, show you how we do that, why we do that, what the advantages and disadvantages are. Then you can make your choice of how you want to do it yourself. What do we look for when we're looking for ribs? Probably the first thing to look for is on the top of the package. These are actually single pack ribs, so they're a little easier to tell. Look at the top, the meat side, and see if you can see any of the bones sticking through the meat. I don't get any on either one of these two, even on the baby backs either. If you do see a rib bone sticking through the meat, that's what we call a shiner. You don't want any shiners. You want a nice thick rib. Looking at the edge of it, as much meat on, as thick as you can get them here. Gives you more meat, just gives you more meat to eat. You know, and look for some fat in those ribs. Both of these are looking okay. I would like to be able to see a little bit more fat in them, but they're probably okay yet anyway. The baby backs we've got here are looking pretty good. I don't see any shiners on those. It's a fairly thick rib. Baby backs tend not to have near as much fat in them as a spare rib do. So it's a little harder to tell how much fat they've got in them. You just don't see much coming through on the surface of them through the package. These ribs actually we picked up at our local grocery store a couple days ago. They are an enhanced product. If you'll see on the label, these are enhanced with a 10 to 12% solution, which is fine. They're going to make a nice moist product for you. Both the spare ribs and the baby back ribs are. It's going to make a nice moist product for you. It's just all up to your preference on what kind of ribs you want. If you want fresh ribs that aren't enhanced, you're going to have to go to Sam's Club, Costco, Restaurant Depot. If you've got a local meat market that deals in fresh product, you can sure go there. Visit with your local grocery stores. If you've got a local store that does their own meat, they're probably getting fresh product in. They can get ribs, they can get pork butts, they can get briskets for you, they can get a good quality meat that's not enhanced. You know, try some of that product, try some of the enhanced product, see what your preference is. That's, again, the fun part about the barbecue, doing a lot of what we're doing, is you get to practice with different products, practice with different rubs, and see what works for you. Well, let's go ahead and get a package of these spare ribs opened up. We'll show you what we're looking for there, show you how to trim up just a full spare. There's not a lot to it. Show you what that membrane is off of the back of them. Get your gloves on. Wash your hands before you put your gloves on, because gloves do tend to leak. You can get holes in them. What contaminants then you've got on your hands can get into your meat and go the other way as well. So let's open this thing up. Find you a good sharp knife. If you don't have a sharp knife, invest in a couple of good knives for handling meat. It will make all the difference in the world for you. We're just going to let that drain off a little bit over the trash can. There we go. Not a bad looking slab of ribs. We got the package open. We can see we've got some nice fat marbled through that, through the red stuff. That's the white stuff and the red stuff. You want to see a lot of white stuff and red stuff in between the red stuff. Looking pretty good there. And not a bad slab. No shiners on it. We've got some nice, fairly thick there. That's not too thin anyway. Relatively happy with that slab of ribs. One of the things you always watch out for on these plastic disposable cutting boards that we do, they tend to get a little slick. So just lay a paper towel down underneath them, and that'll help keep them a little bit more stable for you. This one we're just going to leave as a full spare rib. This is what we always cooked in our restaurant, just the full spares. Really didn't do much of anything to them. That we'll just leave on there. The nice thing about a full spare rib, there's just not much to do to them. We don't do a lot of trimming. You know, it's got some fat on there. If you want to trim some of that off, you can. Normally I wouldn't worry about it. Again, if you're cooking spare ribs, just cook the things. Don't worry about it. The one thing we are going to do though is pull the membrane off the back. We're going to use our trusty screwdriver here to slide underneath that membrane. Just slide right underneath it, all the way across. Hang on to your slab and twist that screwdriver out underneath it. Then grab a dry paper towel. Grab a hold of that little tail of that membrane that you've worked loose with your screwdriver and just pull. Okay, we got most of that membrane off. We got a little bit here left, but I'm not going to worry about it. Okay, what's the deal with the membrane? Well, let's see. We got this membrane right here. It's very tough. It doesn't degrade when it cooks. You can't poke through it. You can cut through it. It tends to be tough to eat. Yeah, we got through it a little bit. If you leave that on there, smoke does not go through that membrane. Seasoning does not go through that membrane. If you're going to season the backside of your ribs, anything else. It's just better to peel it off of there, get rid of it, and then you're done. Throw that away. You don't want it. And that's really about all we're going to do to this one. Sometimes you'll get spare ribs that will have another little flap of meat right here on them. That's called a skirt. You can trim that off if you want. Sometimes they already come like these did with that skirt trimmed off. Other than that, we're looking pretty good on that side. Yeah, we got some nice white fat in between the red meat fibers there. There we go. For a spare rib, I'm really pretty happy with that one. We're just going to leave that one go and cook it. We're going to throw that over here. We'll come back and season it here in just a little bit. Now let's get our other pack of spare ribs out. Let that drain off a little bit. Back up here to our cutting board. Okay, not a bad slab of ribs. Probably doesn't have quite the fat content in it as the last one did, but still not bad. I'm not going to complain about it. Looks good on the back side of it. Now this one, let me grab another paper towel. Use paper towels when you're dealing with raw meat. That way when you get them soaked up, contaminated, just throw them away. You don't have to worry about a cloth towel laying around spreading contaminants from cutting board to the table and everywhere else. So use the paper towels and just throw them away when you're done. We're going to trim this one down to a St. Louis cut rib. When we're done trimming, I'll show you why we do that. Okay, so what we're looking for is we're going to come in just between this bone right here, the breastbone, and we're looking for a line, if you can follow my finger, right across there. So we're actually going to start over here on this end, come across, and just right between the end of this breastbone and this rib bone right here. Here you need a good sharp knife. A chef's knife actually works really well for this. It's a little bit heavier. I'm just used to doing it with my boning knife. There we go. That's about all there is to it. Now you can if you see the white cartilage here, what that does is it comes from the rib bones here, it comes down and that cartilage curves going across into this piece down here. This is fine if you want to stop there trimming. I normally like to trim them up just a little bit closer to get rid of all of this white cartilage here. So we can come in and trim just a little bit more. There we go. That's probably about good right there. You see the difference between where we were and where we are here now? Now we've at least got rid of that cartilage in between. When we go in to start slicing ribs, we're not slicing through that cartilage when we go to slice the St. Louis cut rib. Okay, so why do we cut them down from a full spare rib that we just had out to a St. Louis cut rib to start with? Well, the main thing is look at the difference in thickness of our rib right here versus the cartilage side of the rib down here. This piece of that slab of ribs is a lot thinner than this one is, so this side always takes longer to cook than this side. They're not going to cook the same. Let's get the full spare back out again. Okay, this is the much thicker piece off of these full spare ribs. So which way are you going to cook them to what side is going to be done the way you want it to? Okay, you're thinner up here. If you cook, so this side, what we've got the St. Louis cut, if you cook till that is done, then the cartilage side over here is not going to be as done. It's going to be much more chewier. If you cook till the cartilage side is done, then the bone side, or the thin side, again what we've got cut down to the St. Louis cut, is going to be overdone. That's why we trim them down, so we don't have to worry about that. All of the meat in this St. Louis cut style rib is going to be done just about the way we want it. So what we do then, okay, we've got this one we're going to throw in and cook. Depending on what you want to do with this, you can either bone that out and grind it up as sausage, or what most people do, go ahead and throw that in the cooker, cook that off, and then you can pull that and make bean meat out of it. You can eat it. You can do all kinds of other things with it. We're just going to throw that back over here so we can cook that. Now, again, we're going to pull the membrane off of this one. Get that paper towel underneath there. Grab another paper towel, or grab that screwdriver. Get underneath that membrane. You can use a screwdriver, you can use a spoon, the handle on a spoon, anything you can to get underneath that membrane, and just twist that out. Now you got that nice tail. Grab a hold of it with your dry paper towel and peel it right off of there. Easy peasy. That one's looking pretty good. Again, we don't have the skirt on here, so we don't have to trim that off. On a St. Louis cut, technically that skirt should be trimmed off. Depends on whether yours came with it on or off. The only other thing I might do to this one is trim this little fat piece off right here, a little bit of that silver skin. Get just underneath it. And there we go. Now we've got a St. Louis cut rib from our full spare rib. Put that over here so we can season that up in a minute. And let's see what our baby backs look like. Pork loin back ribs, the package says. Now, if you look at where a baby back rib comes from, why they call these pork loin back ribs is because this set of ribs is up around the right off of the backbone of the hog itself. This sits up here right off the backbone here. It comes around that side, and then the rest of our ribs then fit on the side of the pig on down from the baby back ribs, or the loin back ribs. So this is a little bit more of a pork chop type, less fat in it than the spare ribs. There's probably tends to be less moisture in them than the spare ribs because there's less fat. There's probably some people like the flavor of the spare ribs better than the pork ribs because there's more fat, there's more collagen in the spare ribs than there is in the baby back ribs. Personally, I like just a regular spare rib or a St. Louis cut rib. I've had a lot of good baby back ribs as well too. It's just my preference. If I'm going to eat them, I'd just soon eat a spare rib. That's your own preference, however you want to do it. The other thing on a baby back rib that gets real tough, depending on how they trim off of the spine bone, where that sits up here on top. If they get too far away, they tend to leave, the bones tend to curve down here at the bottom, and it makes them very difficult to cut. These are looking pretty good. There's a little bit of that down here on this end, but really not bad. A lot of baby back ribs you get into, that bone curves down here on the bottom side, and they're just very difficult to cut through when you get ready to cut. But we're basically going to prep these the same way. Get that screwdriver underneath that membrane up here on the end. Pull it out. Another paper towel. And just peel that membrane right back off of there. Because remember, the smoke is not going to go through that membrane. You see how tough it is? Smoke's not going to go through it. Seasoning isn't going to go through it. It's going to be a lot tougher when you get it done. Tougher to bite through and everything else. So get rid of it. That looks like about really all we're going to do with that one. Sometimes you'll see some silver skin on those baby backs right up through here. You can take your knife and just pop underneath that silver skin and trim some of that silver skin off of that. This one's looking pretty good. Some guys will take this muscle off right here and trim underneath that and take that off. I usually leave it on. That one I'm just going to cook just like that. So let's go to seasoning some of these. Come on. First layer, we're going to use my frickin' chicken rub, which I developed for chicken. It works great on chicken, but we also found it works pretty good on pork and ribs too. So we're going to start on the back side of our ribs. Just give them a nice light coat. Remember, you got a lot of surface area on those ribs compared to the meat, so you don't want to get too carried away with the seasoning. Ribs, you can, it's kind of easy to get too much seasoning on them just because the big surface area you got, but your meat's only that thick on them. So you got to be a little bit careful. There we go. And then we're going to go with the second layer of Kelly's pig dust that we made up as well. We've had this one for several years. Again, not too heavy. And we're also going to season that, what we call the rib trim up that we trimmed for that St. Louis cut. So we can cook that if you want to use that for Scooby snacks, or use that rib trim for pull that apart when it's done cooking and use it in your baked beans, anything like that. There we go. That's the back side. Notice we're not rubbing. We take a lot of time to sprinkle rub on so we're nice and uniform. If we rub, see what happens. We just we move it, and then you can't ever get it back in place again. If you need to pat it in, you can, just don't rub. Flip these over, we'll get the other side. Don't let the color on the chicken rib fool you. It's kind of nice and bright and shiny, but that color will go away pretty quick. Again, back with the pig dust. Again, just another nice light coat on top of it. There we go. Pat that on just a little bit. Just like that. Now we can do this up to the night before when you're going to cook them. I don't mind seasoning and then going right in the cooker with them. You can let them set overnight. Let them set for a couple hours after you've seasoned them. Whatever you find works for you. Again, that's kind of your preference, depending on what rubs you're using, what seasoning, how long you think you need to let them set before you put them on the cooker. We're going to take these out here now and throw them on our Louisiana wood pellet grills. Cooking about 250, 275 degrees. The full spare ribs, we're going to let those cook unfoiled, just like we've got them there, until they are done, just to show you that you can do it that way. The St. Louis ribs and the baby back ribs, we're going to go ahead and foil those after about 2 hours of cooking at 250 to 275. That's going to help speed up our cooking a little bit, help give us a little bit more moisture, help tenderize them just a little bit better as well too. Plus give us some more flavor going back into those ribs. So let's go ahead and take these out. We'll put them in the cooker and get them going. Well, we've got our seasoned ribs out here. We're going to go on to our Louisiana wood pellet grills, cooking about 250 to 275. I tend to run a little bit closer to that 275 range. Alrighty, we'll do that. We'll be back in about 2 hours to foil those ribs up. Okay, we've got our ribs back in that we're going to foil. Again, they've been in the cooker for about 2 hours at about 250 to 275 degrees. We'll go ahead and get one more piece of foil out. I do like using, this is an 18-inch wide heavy duty foil that I get in the big rolls, 500-foot rolls at Sam's Club. If you can get the heavy duty Reynolds foil at your local store, it's the same stuff. I do like the 18-inch wide. Even if you do, I still like doubling them up. Just helps us make sure we don't poke through that foil when we go back on the grill. Let's go ahead and put these on. And notice we're going to go upside down with them. Meat side down. For a couple of reasons. If we put them on, notice where the bones are on these. If we put them down like that, we get ready to seal this foil up and pull on them. Now we got bones poking through our foil. And it doesn't do us any good to do the foil. So we just put a meat side down. It helps that. And also we're going to make some nice flavorful liquid down here that go in that foil, which we want in the meat. We don't want it necessarily need it in the bones. We want it in the meat. So if we put it meat side down, then that meat's in that juice, in that liquid. That's what's going to help give us a little bit more flavor as we're going here as well. First thing we're going to do, pork is a little more on that sweeter side. So we're just going to help enhance that a little bit with a little brown sugar. Probably about 1/4 cup again, something like that. Drizzle a little bit on either side, then a little bit right on, which would be the back side. It's going to get spread around in there when we pour that liquid in there anyway, so don't worry about whether you got a few clumps here or there. You can use brown sugar. The brown sugar's got the molasses in it for a little bit more flavor. Honey. Some guys are using agave nectar now on it. The other thing we're going to use is mo butter. Yes, it's mo butter. It's not more butter. If you ever watched Paula Deen, the Butter Queen, it's mo butter. About 1/2 stick of butter per slab. And it's also real butter. Some people like using Parquet. You can if you want to. I just like plain old good real butter. Set that on top like that. There we go. Okay, now we can pull this up and seal this, and then we're going to pour some liquid in there. And actually what we're doing, remember we talked earlier that all the smoke that we're going to get, and basically all the smoker flavor we're going to get into these ribs is already there. So we're not losing out on anything by foiling at this point. We'll still have a nice smoke ring in there. But really what we're doing is we're setting this up for a braise. If you're familiar with those cooking terms, a braise is where you take a tough piece of meat, put it in a sealed environment in liquid, and cook it for an extended period of time. That helps keep moisture in there. That helps break down the collagen that's in these ribs. That helps break down that collagen a little bit faster, which in turn helps keep some more moisture in the ribs themselves. What we're going to put in for moisture is about 1/4 to 1/2 cup in each one. I'm going to use a little bit of apple juice. Apple and pork go together well. Then the other thing I like to use is a little bit of the peach nectar. Don't worry, they won't taste like peach when they come out. I think the consistency of that nectar does help. I just like the flavor it gives. You can get the peach nectar, apricot nectar works well. They do make a apple one like that. That works pretty good in them too. But we've got those sealed up now. We're going to go back in the cooker at that same 250 to 275 where you had it set before. Probably about another 2 hours on. Then they should be done and ready to come out and eat. So let's go put them back on the grill. We are back out to our Louisiana wood pellet grills again. We've had the ribs in for 2 hours. We pulled them out, wrapped them in foil with some butter and brown sugar, some apple juice. Now we're going to put them back in the grill at that same temperature we were running before. So let's go ahead and throw them in. There we go. We are back in, nice shiny bright silver foil. Ribs are getting happy. We'll be back and pull those out when they're done. We are back inside with our baby back ribs, our St. Louis ribs, and our full spare ribs down in the bottom of the pan. We're just going to open these up and check to make sure they're done before we get too terribly excited about slicing them. Get that over here where you can see. Look at that nice juice in there. It's going to be some good stuff. And I'm just checking texture with my thermal pin. Feel between the bones, the meat between the bones. See how nice and soft it is. They are done, they are ready. What we're looking for there is that should feel like a hot knife through a stick of butter. Nice and soft and tender, but you want just a little bit of resistance on it too. There we go, just a little bit, but yet it still goes in nice and easy. There we go. Those are ready to slice and serve. So let's start with, we're going to start with the full spare ribs. Let me grab some gloves. And a couple of pans to put our ribs in. And my handy dandy slicing knife. Good sharp knife when you're slicing ribs, brisket is just as important when you're slicing when it's done as important as it is when you're slicing, when you're trimming up in the first place. I like these serrated edge knives. Any restaurant supply store will have these. They're 15 bucks. You can buy 2 or 3 of them. If they get dull, you're ready to, you can throw them away and start over again. Okay, with our full spare rib, remember this is the full spare. For the St. Louis rib, we trimmed the gristle part off down here, and we'll show you the difference here in a minute. These also have the breastbone on right here. So there's a couple different ways of handling this. You can either slice the ribs into groups of 3s, or if you want to slice them singly, which is what we're going to do, you need to slice the breastbone off. Good eating. If somebody wants to chew on that, they sure can. We're going to put that in the pan. I'm going to start up here on the big bone end. Notice we're doing this bone side up or meat side down on the cutting board. That's because we can see the bones through the back side of them. Notice how easy that knife goes through there. That's what we're looking for. These might be just a little darker on the back side than what I typically like. There we go. And we'll pick these back up, throw them back in the pan. They're looking good and moist, maybe a little thin there in spots. We also want these ribs to set and rest before you start slicing on them. Here we go. Okay. See, even though we were only in there for 2 hours before, these were actually 4 hours, we still got a nice smoke ring in there on the bottom side. These are looking good. There we go. There is our full spare ribs. Let's pull our St. Louis ribs out. There we go. Nice color on them yet. A little bit lighter since we did foil them. A little lighter on the back side since we did foil them. Since we already trimmed that cartilage off down on the bottom, we don't have any more trimming to do. We can just come in and start slicing. And they are done. Again, on the back, we're cutting with the meat side down, bone side up, so we can see our bones. Just like that, because the bones will curve on the way through. If we hit a bone, we can always adjust a little bit, just like that. But we still have a nice, sharp, clean cut on the front side when we go to serve them. I'm going to leave that one. Looking good. Okay. Now here's our St. Louis cut rib. We've got some nice smoke ring in there yet, even though they were only in for 2 hours. But now let's compare between that St. Louis rib, cut rib, and the full spare rib. We got these pretty well done, but notice how much thicker this is down here versus it is up here. This is why we trim that cartilage off. We trim it right there because it's got a lot more cartilage in it. It's got a lot more collagen. It takes longer to cook. It's going to be a little bit tougher. Some people like that. They don't mind chewing on it. If you want to cook yours as a full spare rib, that's fine. Go for it. If you want to do them as a St. Louis rib, you can do them that way. Cooking as a St. Louis cut rib with that cartilage trimmed off, they tend to be a little bit more uniform in tenderness all the way across the rib. That's why we do that. So we've got some nice looking St. Louis ribs there. Now, if you want to sauce your ribs and set some sauce on them, you can sure do that before you start slicing them. Pull those ribs out just like we did. I would let them set in the foil wrapped up just like this. Let them set for 20-30 minutes. Okay, then you can pull them out of the foil, put them back on the grill, on the smoker at 250 to 275 where you've been running. Paint a nice thin layer of sauce on the back side. Put them down that way first on the grill with a little bit of sauce on them. Don't get it too thick. Cook 15 minutes, let that sauce get set up, a little bit tacky. Roll them over, paint sauce on the front side. For about another 15 minutes or so, let that sauce get a little bit tacky, and then you've got sauced ribs. Okay, I prefer them this way without the sauce on them. If you want sauce, we can come back in later and put sauce on them. Sauce at the table. That's the way I learned barbecue, was if you had to sauce it, you screwed it up. Okay, the baby backs. Again, these are the worst thing to cut because of that bone across the back side of them down here. There we go. Between the bones. There we go. We're just going to put these on the other side back in the foil. Get a little bit of that juice back on there again. Nice smoke ring in them. They're moist, tender. See the moisture coming out of them. That's what we're looking for. See, we've got a nice light smoke ring in them. They'll have a nice light smoke flavor, but not overpowering. Not going to taste like lighter fluid. They're not going to make you belch 2 or 3 hours later after you get done eating a slab of them. There we go. There. Okay. Well, let's see how we did. Here we go. Yeah, you get to watch me eat on TV. Just right. A nicely done rib should not be fall off the bone, but you should be able to see a tooth mark, a bite mark out of them on both sides. And then you should be able to watch that bone. It should be moist. When you pull the meat away, the rest of the meat shouldn't come with it, but the bone will start drying out just like this one's doing. We hit the almost perfect tenderness on that. If you want your ribs fall off the bone, go ahead and cook them that way. That's fine. This is the way I was taught how to cook them. That's what we shoot for. So that's about all we've got for the ribs. Too bad you guys don't get to sit here and eat ribs now for the rest of the afternoon. Our camera guys are sure going to be happy though. But thanks for tuning in to Nex-Tech, the PitMasters. I'm Kelly Wertz. Join us again for the next show, and we'll see you soon.